Hi, my name is Carson Futch. I'm with Saunders Real Estate. I'd like to thank you ladies for coming in this morning and talking with us from ACT Environmental in regards to environmental audits on property.
Hi, I'm Floyd Graves with ACT Environmental and Infrastructure. I've been with ACT for almost 10 years, and I've been in the environmental industry for about 30 years. And ACT is an environmental company that handles basically anything from consulting to actual cleanup, transportation, disposal, any of the environmental concerns that we might have.
My name is Ashley Shive. I've been with ACT Environmental and Infrastructure for 15 years. I've been in the environmental industry just about 30 years. My primary focus is in chemical waste disposal, and I run our chemical emergency response department at ACT.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to inquire today about what should an owner do, or not an owner, but a buyer of a property do in regards to an environmental audit, or I hear those words thrown around a lot, from friends are saying, well, make sure the environmental process has been checked out, things that may have happened or occurred on that site over time that you may not be aware of, so you want to be sure you have some insurance. I guess it's kind of like title insurance in regards to the title of a property.
The things to consider in a phase one in the due diligence process that we take is to review all of the historical pieces of information that are available, as far back as 50 years, or if there are more older pieces of information available. For instance, sometimes we can look at insurance maps that are from the 1900s, if those are available, especially if it's in the center of town and a commercial piece of property that has existed for a while. And looking at what the usage of it was, and seeing if there are any of the items in the historical research that would give an indication that there could have been some recognized environmental concerns. Like, for instance, an old gas station may have tanks underground and they could have leaked, or a repair facility. And often, before we knew what was happening with the environment, we did things like poured oil down the sink or transmission fluid that would go into the sewage that's right on property, and create a big contamination problem. And in Florida, because of our intricate groundwater system, it could contaminate the groundwater as well. So those are the things that we look at. We look at historical aerials. We look at the city directories and look at all of that just to see what was on that piece of property and also what surrounds that piece of property. So sometimes that property did not produce the contamination, but perhaps an adjoining piece of property did.
Your financial institution that is going to help with your mortgage will probably require it because they don't want to invest their money in something that they're then going to get stuck paying for the cleanup. Environmental remediation is extremely expensive and can be as simple as a few soil samples to verify there's no contamination to remediation of hundreds of tons. Florida, especially with our background in the cattle industry, has many parcels of property that are contaminated with heavy metals and other toxic chemicals from cattle dipping vats. When we would dip the cattle, prior to fully understanding what it meant to have those chemicals hit the ground. And as Floyd alluded to, because we are so close to sea level, groundwater is extremely important to us in Florida. We drink it, we swim in it, we eat the fish that come from it. We don't want the contamination to be in the water, which means we have to remove it from the soil as quickly as possible. So when they do the phase one environmental assessment and they find that, once you hire a company, they will provide that report to you and to your financial institution. Then you make an informed decision on, do I want to buy this property? Do I want to have the seller maybe clean it up? Because they can be cleaned up. Some can be quick remediation, some are multi-year projects, and maybe you don't want to invest time and money in property that's going to be a multi-year cleanup. So it's how to make the best informed decision.
So what I'm hearing you say is it doesn't just pertain to a commercial type property or institutional property or industrial property. It could even be a ranch property or a recreational property.
Absolutely.
Because dipping bats wouldn't have been in the middle of town.
Right.
They would have been out on a country, in a country area, or out in the,
Yes.
on a ranch or farm somewhere.
Absolutely. And I think the one that people seem to forget about the most is it doesn't even have to be on the property you're buying. Is old gas stations, especially before the laws changed and required us to have more protection for leaking of tanks, those pollution plumes can spread quite far and can be impacting the property you want to buy. And that could be in town or out in the country, anywhere. There might have been a fuel station. We used to bury our heating oil tanks when we did all of our heating that way. So there are heating oil tanks and pollution from heating oil tanks throughout the state.
Well, talking about diesel tanks or gas tanks on a farm that could have been buried years ago, and that's how they did it before they did the above ground with containment.
Absolutely.
Often the generators that are provided to run the pumps, the water pumps from a water source nearby, they're often old, leaking, and in those situations, and on a lot of farms, we have seen just the barn area, you'll find just a plethora of old chemicals, fertilizers. Ashley did a project at one point where we found a barn that was full of all kinds of items that had to be disposed of.
One of the things that's very interesting that we find is as we have learned more about chemicals as a nation, we've started outlawing them. You can't manufacture them, you can't purchase them, but in the past they weren't illegal. And so whether it's out on an old grove or in your grandfather's garage in town, we tend to find, getting to be rare now, extremely dangerous chemicals that have been outlawed since maybe the 70s, but they're still around all over. And so when they pass away or they bequeath their property to someone else and they put it up for sale, we find these chemicals all over. And unfortunately, a lot of times not stored in a garage maybe with concrete, but just out in a shed where the rust has eroded the container and it's leaked onto the ground, and then again, of course, it's gone into their septic field or it's into the groundwater or potentially, and requires cleanup. That is actually quite common that we find those.
So these are all things you look for in what you call a phase 1 audit.
In the phase 1 just is a look and see and a historical report. And if done properly by the ASTM standard, is your guarantee in a court of law and all the way to the federal court of law. And there have been cases after cases that have been able to be upheld for, if you do the proper due diligence and nothing is found, and you can use that report saying, I did my part, so you would be exonerated. But in the case where you didn't do the proper due diligence, then you would be liable. And if you own the piece of property in the state of Florida, you own whatever problem there might be.
Which is a common misconception. But ownership does mean responsibility for cleanup falls on you. So if you make the purchase, now it's your responsibility.
Thank you, ladies, for coming in this morning and sharing all this valuable information for us and our clients in regards to environmental audits.